Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast. That is, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot with Kim Strassel and Kyle Peterson. And just to finish up another point about the exit polling in New Hampshire, 42% of the voters asked if Donald Trump would be unfit for office if he's convicted of a felony. 42% asked that question, said he would be unfit if convicted of a felony, which is extraordinary because it's possible he could be convicted of a felony this year if one or more of the trials that are in train are held this year. We don't know when they will be held. There's appeals and other legal maneuvering going on. But, Kim, that's another red flashing light here for Republicans.
No, it should be. I mean, all of these numbers should be red flashing lights. It's why Nikki Haley went out of her way to remind everyone about how many elections have been lost under Donald Trump. One more thing just I have to say on Donald Trump. You know, I heard a lot of people saying that his comments last night were bitter, were angry. No, this is what I saw when I looked at Donald Trump. He was embarrassed.
Embarrassed? Explain that. What do you mean?
Well, he's embarrassed. Look, he's supposed to be the crowning, returning, reigning king, walking all over everything. He clocked in at like 53%. Okay, Biden wasn't even on the ballot. And he did better than Dean Phillips as a margin than Donald Trump did against Nikki Haley. And that's because some of her attacks are working, by the way, too. That threat that he leveled, the thing about how she was going to be under investigation,
right?
That was said because he knows her comments about him and chaos wherever he goes are making a difference, because what he wants to do is suggest to everyone that the same thing would happen to any Republican were they to get into office. They'd be under investigation. They would become the center of chaos. He's not unique in that way. I think it's a sign that some of these broadsides she's leveling at him are making a difference, certainly getting under his skin.
And, of course, if she wants to have any chance of winning in South Carolina, she will have to continue with those much more pointed, specific attacks. And I would argue she would need to broaden her case both against Trump and some of his record, but also make the case a more positive case for what she stands for and what generational change really means. All right, let's turn to the Democratic side of things. Kim mentioned Dean Phillips, and he received 21% of the vote. Biden wasn't on the ballot, but the party did conduct a write-in campaign for him. I think that the magnitude of that vote wasn't what Phillips wanted. I think he wanted to do better, but he did say he's staying in the race. Let's listen.
You ready to keep this baby going? Because I sure as hell am. You know, I do this for a really simple reason. We need to beat Donald Trump, and I think I'm the only one standing in the way of that man. That's why we got to keep going. You know, Joe Biden is a good man. He is a fine man. Yes, he is, everybody. He's our president. But I got to tell you, everyone, he cannot win. The polls are saying he cannot win. His approval numbers are saying he can't win. And the fact that an unknown congressman from Minnesota 2 weeks before the election said, I'm going to come up here and run for president, just got 21%. That's saying something too, my friends.
Kyle, I have to say that Phillips is a fairly charismatic guy. He really is. And his young vigor is such a contrast to Biden and to Trump, also as Nikki Haley's is. But I suspect he was disappointed by 21%. What do you think?
Yeah, it seems to me that this is a result that is not big enough to send a shockwave into these coming Democratic primaries and really upend Biden's chances for renomination. But I do think that it's good enough to keep Dean Phillips moving forward. And he has a similar sort of incentive to stay in this as long as he can or as long as he wants to, because, again, the known unknowns about President Biden are large. One of them is just his age, and that's true on both sides of the aisle here. We have a 77-year-old running against an 81-year-old, and so one of these guys could have a health issue, and we hope that doesn't happen, but just realistically, that is on the table. And two is the polling that shows President Biden trailing Donald Trump, including a lot of the key swing states. Dean Phillips is making a bet, and he has said this explicitly, that his goal is to keep going and get enough momentum that if we keep seeing these polls that show Biden losing to Trump, then at some point a pollster is going to ask, what about Dean Phillips? And if Dean Phillips is doing better against Trump than Biden is, then he sees as his opening to make the argument that the Democratic Party has to make a change. The other thing that I would say about this as a sign of weakness is that Dean Phillips is not the kind of candidate that you would pitch as a centrist, independent, moderate alternative to Trump and to Biden, because he is to the left of Biden on a lot of these policy issues. He is talking about Medicare for all, so nationalizing healthcare. He's talking about free college. It is a bit of a Bernie Sanders agenda. And so the fact that he is at 20% in New Hampshire when he's selling that, it makes me wonder if you had a Dean Phillips running in New Hampshire, but he was talking about, American energy, lowering energy costs, and making that kind of a more centrist Democratic pitch. I wonder if he would be doing a lot better than 20%.
Kim, we've been talking today about the results in the exit polls for Trump showing his weakness. But here we have Dean Phillips saying Biden can't win. Is the defining fact, underlying fact about a Biden-Trump rematch, is it weakness? That both candidates are really, really extraordinarily weak and unpopular, as well as old. And so it's really an extraordinary contest in that sense. Usually parties nominate candidates who are popular, not candidates who aren't.
That's absolutely the case, Paul. I mean, essentially what we are faced as a nation at the moment is, do we want to have another election in which the two candidates are vying to see who is less unpopular? Or do you want to have a race where two candidates are vying to see who is more popular? We have a Biden-Trump rematch. It is the former. And it was interesting to me, one thing, Dean Phillips and Nikki Haley, I don't know if this was intentional, they both ended up using the same line, both saying that the electorate deserves a competition, not a coronation. And Dean Phillips also went so far as to say, I think this nation would rather see a Dean Phillips and Nikki Haley competition than a Donald Trump, Joe Biden competition. And I mean, I think it's somewhat in his benefit to do that, right? He's putting himself, making common cause with her as the underdog here. But I wonder if Nikki Haley's willingness to confront that more head on, and Dean Phillips' increasing vocalness about that, has the ability to make that more into a dominating question in the primary contests that are coming forward. Because one consequence of the Republican competitors to Donald Trump tiptoeing around him is that we've really only had that become a sort of a bigger issue where Nikki Haley's been wielding it more like a club for a little more than a week now, maybe a little bit more, out of months that we've been having these competitions. If you give it a little bit more time, does it sink in some more, especially combined with some of these numbers about independence and Biden's weakness coming out of New Hampshire? I think that that's a really interesting question.
And beyond the two primary campaigns, it could have implications for a third party, a possible third party candidacy, if Biden and Trump are the nominees. All right. We're going to end it there today. We will be back every day, as we are, talking about the comedy that is American politics these days. And thanks to Kim. Thanks to Kyle. Thank you all for listening. I hope you're with us tomorrow.